This is Steve Bramson, and you're listening to a podcast named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
The gang's all here, they're on the case, and there's no ghost that they wouldn't face, 'cause they dig it, Scooby-Doo. Yeah, they dig it, Scooby-Doo.
Hey gang, and welcome to another episode of a podcast named Scooby-Doo. I'm your host Mike Josic, and on this week's episode we are going to be continuing with our great interview with Be Cool Scooby-Doo story editor Jon Colton Barry. Part 2 has more of what we had in the first, talking about the development of Be Cool as a show, where some of the ideas behind it came from, and basically what they were kind of trying to do with the humor and the designs. And we also talk a little bit about Scooby-Doo in general, and yeah, there's no point in me telling you all about it since you're here. You're going to be listening to it in a couple of minutes, so I'll leave it at that. I will point out that Jon and I did have a chance to get together in the last week, and we did manage to record a brand new audio commentary for Mystery 101, as we had hoped to do. That was one of the things that we were most excited about doing this. As I said before, there were some technical difficulties, and we've ironed all that out. Jon did a fabulous commentary, good solid, 21, 22 minutes of just talking Scooby-Doo and Mystery 101. I'm really excited to get that done, so that'll probably be coming in about a week, maybe a little bit less than a week. It depends on how much time I have to put that together, but no more than a week, promise that. And there's really no other news to kind of get into, but I did want to just throw out, if you don't know about the blog named Scooby-Doo, which is the companion blog to the podcast, probably sounds pretty obvious, that does exist. It's a WordPress blog. The address is scoobydoocast.wordpress.com. I put up some comic book reviews. I'm currently doing a little series of, I call it Scooby-Doo versus the Aliens, and it's just kind of tracking Scooby's encounters with creatures from another world, be they real or people in masks with really great costuming skills. It was actually influenced by my love of the Alien franchise, and I have another podcast. It's a film-centric podcast called For Your Consideration. You can check it out at fycshow.libsyn.com or facebook.com/fycshow. I do that show with my friend and co-host Dustin Friesenhand, and there's been a lot of Alien content. We did the Alien film, and I covered the Alien soundtrack, and a bunch of stuff, and I just kind of wondered, I was in such an Alien headspace, how can I roll this into the Scooby podcast and the Scooby world, and kind of put these two loves of mine that were sort of competing for mental landscape. And I thought, how many times has Scooby-Doo actually encountered aliens? So I started looking at old episodes and old villains, and thought I would just write up a little piece about it. It's not War and Peace. It's nothing, really amazing or deep. It is what it is, and I'm having fun doing it. And if you want to go and check it out, let me know what you think of it. That would also be awesome. And just before I let you go and run the interview, I also just wanted to point out that episodes of Season 2 have been running in some regions internationally. I know that they're airing in the UK. I think they might be in India. They might be in Russia. But that means Season 2 episodes are coming. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this show is, as Season 2 episodes are airing, I wanted to do after shows. So I'll probably be finding some other people who want to come on, and we'll do kind of like a roundtable after show on the Season 2 episodes as they roll out. I'm not sure how the Boomerang app is actually going to release them, if it's like Netflix where they just release all of them at the same time, or if they're releasing like little batches of them. We actually don't get the Boomerang app in Canada, so I'm not even 100% sure how that's going to work, but it is something that I really wanted to do. I might get in touch with some of the other podcasting people. We'll see what happens. I think that'll be fun. So watch for that. That will be coming. And just one last quick item, since I don't get the opportunity to do this very often. I'm releasing this episode on June 14th, 2017, which is the 15th anniversary of the release of the live-action Scooby-Doo film written by James Gunn and directed by Raja Gosnell. So it was on this day in 2002 that the world was introduced to the live-action film. It has its detractors, it has its fans, and having revisited it, I'm kind of on both sides of the fence personally. But the movie at the time was wildly successful. It had like an $84 million budget, and it grossed like $275 million. It spawned a sequel, and it has a lasting legacy in the Scooby-Doo world because Matt Lillard, who played the live-action Shaggy, went on to play the voice for the animated Shaggy, as we all know, in Mystery Incorporated and Be Cool Scooby-Doo. And Linda Cardellini, who played Velma in the live-action film, went on to play Hot Dog Water in Mystery Incorporated, who was kind of a dark mirror image of Velma, as played by Mindy Cohn. And that was really cool, bringing in the film Velma and have her play with the cartoon Velma. And Hot Dog Water was kind of a cool character to begin with. I mean, with a name like Hot Dog Water, how do you not like that? How do you not like someone named Hot Dog Water? And bringing this up now, I'm actually thinking it would have been a great idea to have recorded like an audio commentary or something for the film, which, there's still 2 weeks left in June, so I might actually do that. I hate doing commentary solo, and you probably don't want to listen to me talking solo anyways. So I'm gonna put some feelers out. I'm gonna see if anybody might be interested in doing either like a special episode or maybe a full-on kind of audio commentary or roundtable about the show or about the film. Maybe I can get that out before the end of June. Man, June's gonna be like a busy month for the podcast if I do that, because you got this episode, you've got the next episode with John's commentary, and then if I do an anniversary episode for the film, I'm just gonna have to give up like eating or going to the bathroom or something to get all this done. But I know you probably don't care about my trials and tribulations. So anyways, happy birthday, happy anniversary to Scooby-Doo, the live-action film. You had a good run. We're glad you exist. Keep on keeping on. And with that, I've exhausted everything I have to talk about, unless you count my conversation with Jon, which is the best segue I can come up with to roll you into the interview segment. So enjoy the interview. I know you will. I mean, it's part 2. You came back for part 2, right? So you like part 1. You're here for part 2. You're probably going to enjoy it. Unless you don't, and that's not for me to say. But I digress. Regardless, here is part 2, Jon Colton Barry. We'll see you on the other side.
Keep it real.
Now, ever since I first saw the show, I've always kind of wondered where the title Be Cool Scooby-Doo comes from. If that was like established when the creative team came on and Warner was like, that's what it's going to be, or if you guys came up with it.
Yes, yeah. The title was there when we got there, and we weren't crazy about the title, again, because we thought it sounds like hey, be cool, Scooby. Like when you say cool, it just sounds not cool. And we sort of wanted to have sort of wipe the slate clean and go with sort of a simple title. Just call it Scooby or Scooby-Doo or even something that suggested that we're focusing now on the gang as a whole a little bit more than just Scooby-Doo. Not this, but we're with you, Scooby-Doo, or Scooby and the gang, or like something that suggested the ensemble approach, which we were trying. That said a little bit more about what our approach was. But Be Cool Scooby-Doo was what we were given, and we went with it.
How was the Be Cool Scooby-Doo process similar or different to other shows you've worked on? I know because you've worked with Zach before, was the dynamic the same, or were things just so different because it was such a big franchise?
Well, yeah, Warner Brothers, rightly so, is protective of their big franchises, and so it's strange. Everybody will have a different idea about what defines Scooby-Doo, what makes it Scooby-Doo. Apparently, you could lose Fred, Velma, and Daphne, and it's still Scooby-Doo. I guess as long as the dog is there, it's Scooby-Doo. And and I guess Shaggy, to a slightly less degree, is just as important. But that was Their main concern was not changing Shaggy and Scooby too much, but really everything else was fair game. You know, and the monsters, they wanted classic sort of monsters, you know, sort of moaning, growling monsters, and we wanted to, and as we went along, we stretched out a little bit more. You'll see it in season 2, but we were thinking about Ghostbusters and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. How he was frightening. He was definitely a threat and terrifying, but he was also funny. And we originally wanted to get into that sort of idea where if we're going to be doing a comedy, let's not put restrictions on the comedy. Let's not tie our hands behind our back. Let's be able to do funny ghosts, funny monsters. Let's have the comedy be able to go wherever it wants to go. You know, the audience, you know, it's not as if the audience is going to be taking it seriously. You know, the look is so pushed and so cartoony. As long as the audience believes the characters feel threatened by or are frightened by the monster, then that's all you really need. And there could be humorous aspects to the monster. So that was a restriction that was put on us fairly early on, and you know, we understood because part of Scooby-Doo is there's a horror aspect to it. There's a mystery, scary aspect to it. And because the rest of it now was so broad and silly, you know, I guess they felt that you needed that counterbalance, or you'd lose that 25%, you know, or whatever, you know, proportional emotional impact they wanted.
I think I probably know how you're going to answer this, but do you feel that the fact that the show has an almost 50-year history helped or hindered the making of a new Scooby-Doo show?
I would say neutral, actually. I would say neither.
They kind of cancel each other out.
yeah. In a way, it canceled it out. I mean, for us, because you know, we looked at it with such fresh eyes, and you know, we knew we were going to be doing it with, you know, when I say we, I'm talking about Zach and I, you know, and in particular, I guess me, because Zach brought me in for a very specific sort of comedic tone, which was sort of the tone I brought into Phineas, which was sort of the tone that I had been developing, writing, you know, stage comedy and sketch comedy, sort of based on my old sort of influences and stuff like that, absurdist, silly sort of comedy. And we knew we were going to be bringing that voice to this show, which it had never had before. So it was going to feel like a completely different series. And it was sort of fun and exciting to see how we could make it our own and bring our voice to it and bring that tone to it. And also, you know, giving dimensionality and personalities to the full gang was something that no one had done before. So its history showed us what had not yet been done. And we could look back and say, well, what are the aspects that we like about it? We really didn't. We started in 1969 and didn't take anything away. We only added to 1969. We added, you know, we were given the van done now. That wasn't our idea, but we sort of Fred and made it an extension of his controlling personality, you know. And we added, you know, Daphne's eccentricities and tried to make her, you know, an interesting, funny character who was not just the pretty one anymore. And, you know, and so it was fun to sort of put our stamp on it and try to do our take on it. And the hindrance of the history was that the public and Warner Brothers itself has a preconceived notion. Whatever Scooby-Doo you grew up with is what you consider to be Scooby-Doo, is what I found. The online, people, Pup called Scooby-Doo, that's the best one, or what's new Scooby-Doo, that's the best one, like whatever one was the one that you saw growing up is what Scooby-Doo means to you, and that's how you define Scooby-Doo, and so a lot of people really like Mystery Incorporated, and this is a 180-degree turn from that. So Mystery Incorporated fans tend to hate this show. But what we found is it mostly has to do with just the look of it. Is people make up their minds about this show based on the more pushed cartoony look. There's something demented about the eyes of the characters, or we hear constantly, what did Seth MacFarlane draw it? It just does not look anything to me like Seth MacFarlane art, but I understand what they're talking about. It's more pushed cartoony art, and so they make up their minds about it. But it appears that people who actually sat down and gave the show a chance have been won over by the characters and the writing and the stories, and they see that the show is not dumbed down in any way, shape, or form, that we actually, tried to make a very, very smart, interesting, fun Scooby-Doo that was of its time. And so the history works for us and against us, and it's mostly public perception that's working against us. People fear new.
One of the reasons that I started the podcast and do these interviews and emphasize the commentaries and whatnot is because it seems like for a very long time, Warner Brothers treats the franchise and the property as though it's essentially aimed at 8 to 12-year-olds. And 8 to 12-year-olds aren't interested in commentaries or don't care about behind-the-scenes stuff. And it doesn't seem to acknowledge that for a property that's 47 years old, some of those fans might have grown up and they might have an interest in animation history or just animation in general and behind the scenes and whatnot. The last two iterations of Scooby-Doo, Mystery Incorporated and Be Cool, they seem to be geared at more of a teen audience or older, and it still seems to be marketed to a much younger audience. Can you speak to that at all?
We got hit with a Y7 rating, which horrified us. It didn't really affect us in terms of sophistication of humor or storytelling. It's just sort of in terms of what you could show, violence or certain, everyone's got to wear seatbelts and have helmets and that sort of stuff. But we were surprised that we got a Y7. Phineas and Ferb was a board-driven show, which means basically there's a writing staff that writes outlines, and then it is given to storyboard/writers who write the script from the outline and storyboard it at the same time, and that lends itself towards finding more visual humor but what you get there is a lot of people who went to art school who are now writing. It's a tough balance. Animation writing is not in the Writers Guild. It's not considered real writing for some reason, even though there's really no difference. On Phineas, what we found was that we ignored demographics. We just made the show we thought was funny. If it was funny to us, it went in. As long as we, avoided stuff that was inappropriate. There's a great John Lasseter quote about the Pixar films. He said, "We don't make entertainment for children. We just don't exclude children." And that to me is the perfect summation of the attitude that we should have in doing animated shows or movies or anything. Is it should be able to be enjoyed by a 3-year-old or an 80-year-old. There's no reason why you can't entertain everybody. Once in a while, they might say, hey, a 6-year-old isn't going to get that joke, but, they might get the next one. And what you'll find is that 6-year-olds will get jokes much more than you think they will. And when you're 9 years old, I remember seeing Airplane when I was a kid. I didn't get every single joke, but funny movies are funny when you're a kid, even if it's not a kiddie film. You can be smart, you can be funny, and trying to make a show that the parents can sit down and laugh and enjoy just as much as the children should be the goal. And there's no reason not to aim for that goal. And Phineas and Ferb was a giant hit show just for that reason. Adults loved it just as much as kids loved it. It aimed at everybody, and that's what we were trying to do with this. As far as 6-year-olds were concerned, the only thing I cared about is, do they understand what the good guy wants, and do they understand what bad thing will happen if he doesn't get it? That's all I cared about.
I meant more specifically, like, you look at just about any home video release of like an Adult Swim show, and they'll have animatics and they'll have commentaries on every episode and behind the scenes stuff, and there just seems to be none of that love for any of the Scooby-Doo shows going all the way back to Zombie Island. In recent memory.
Mystery Incorporated didn't have commentaries or
nothing,
anything.
Just episodes, yeah.
Yeah, see, I'm, I've been writing animation for 10 years, but I've only done 2 shows. I did Phineas, for 6 years, and then I did Be Cool Scooby-Doo. So that's my experience with animation. I also am, a live action screenwriter and have written for the stage and sketch comedy and do a whole bunch of stuff. So animation is just one of the things. So I don't know that much about it. I just know on Phineas we did commentaries all the time and lots of behind the scenes stuff. So I assumed, that's what everyone did. But I guess, if the show is a hit, maybe they do more of that stuff.
Maybe,
because Scooby-Doo just didn't air it at the same time, in a consistent way for it to find an audience. So I guess taking the extra time and money to do that sort of stuff, I don't know. Was Mystery Incorporated a hit? It ran 2 seasons, right?
Yeah, I think it was planned as 2 seasons. My understanding was that it was planned as 2 seasons, and I think it was 26-episode seasons, so they get 52 episodes, which puts them into a syndication number. So I think everybody was kind of good with that.
Right. Yeah. We there was talk of a 3rd season pickup, but they were talking about going to an 11-minute format actually on it. We did a couple. We did. I guess they might air them in 2nd season. We did 1 episode that is 2 11 minutes. But they ended up not picking it up for 3rd season based on what, I don't know, because I'm not sure how they calculated, the popularity of the show, as they had, they burned through 10 of them in a row and then waited 3 months and aired 1, and, they haven't aired one, I think, since March of last year.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So I'm not exactly sure what they're basing their decisions on. From what I heard, Cartoon Network liked the show, but
well, you had said at one point, I think it was on the Scooby Addicts boards, where it wasn't supposed to originally be on Cartoon Network, but they were so kind of excited about it that they wanted to put it there.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Originally, it was just going to be on Boomerang. They were going to be rebranding Boomerang, and Be Cool is going to be one of its sort of, flagship, relaunch shows. But Cartoon Network, again, this is what I heard, loved the show and decided that they were going to find space for it and air it on Cartoon Network itself, which they did do. but they showed, the 10 completed episodes that we had done right in a row, 10 days in a row, and then we were out of episodes that were done. So we had to wait for, them to come back from overseas, being at, so suddenly there was a giant break and we lost the momentum, whatever momentum we had gained by that point.
Right.
But yeah, who knows? You never know what's going on behind the scenes. I have to assume that people much smarter than I am, with much more experience, are the people who are doing the programming, and they know how to do that. I would love to have someone sit down and explain to me what the thinking is, on how they rolled this particular show out. It did not seem a formula for great success, but then again, what do I know? I'm just trying to think of silly things for a dog to say.
So obviously we're hoping, because there is a second season, we're hoping that we will eventually see the second season.
Apparently I'm hearing February 13th it is beginning to air again. And I don't know where. Yeah,
starting with the unaired first season episodes, or did Netflix kind of?
I believe starting with the unaired. Because again, 4 out of those 5 last episodes are some of my favorites. Really, really, really fun stuff. We really started hitting a rolling into second season. We didn't take a break, or I didn't take a break at least. As soon as I was done writing first season, I jumped into second season. And so if they can keep it consistent and keep it on, the same channel at the same time, and an audience can find it, I hope people will really give it a chance, catch up on first season, get to know the characters, because we do such super fun things with them, and really explore them, and have so much fun with them as we roll into second season, that I'm excited to see what people think. I'm very, very, very proud of the work that we did on the show.
You said in print somewhere, I've read that you really enjoyed writing for Daphne. But then anytime I heard you list off your favorite episodes, the 3 or 4 you list always tend to be Fred Jones episodes. So I was kind of wondering where that shift happened, where you became kind of a Fred fan.
Around the end of season 1, Fred began to take over as my favorite character to write. And Fred, just the way it evolved, Daphne was so fresh and interesting and fun to create, but Fred as a human being developed in such an interesting way to me that the Fred-centered episodes became, and just Fred's psychology and Fred as a character just became really, really interesting to me. And also you'll notice as the series progresses, that the more outlandish sort of Daphne du jour sort of falling away, and Daphne just sort of develops just very strong opinions. So I mean, the characters just sort of again took on a life of their own and developed in their own way, But definitely, Fred became the character that I enjoyed, centering stories around the most. Shaggy and Scooby being the ones I enjoyed the least, simply because there's just so little you can do with them. There's just the least dimensional characters. Scooby in particular, he's just not a lead character. He's just not a character that is dimensional enough to drive a story. So yeah, I'm sorry. What was your question?
No, you covered it. You were talking about just why you like Fred now.
Yeah.
Which is, and I mean, he was pretty much a blank slate, so.
Yeah, he was absolutely a blank slate, and up through Mr. Incorporated, he just liked traps. I mean, it was just a one-note joke. Every scene was, I guess we'll have to stay here late. And Daphne goes up, you mean just you and me? Yeah, we could set a trap. And she goes, drat. like it was over and over again, the same joke. I did not get it.
So the show is done, right? There's no renewal for 3, you said.
Yeah, as of right now, it is done. I mean, barring some, Family Guy-esque, people or start watching it and go absolutely nuts for it, and the show becomes, very popular and successful in second season, and suddenly they want more. That's it. I mean, I'm, and I don't know who would be making it at that point.
I read somewhere that you had consulted on Scoob. Is that correct?
Yes. Dan Povenmire is an executive producer on it, and I'm also friends with the guys at Atlas Entertainment, Richard Suckle, the guys they make all the DC superhero movies also. A good friend of mine, Eric Singer, who wrote American Hustle with them, has been working with them for years. And so both those guys I know, and Richard was a big fan of Phineas. He knew I was doing Scooby, and so they were having some issues. They're trying a very difficult story for the movie, and so they just brought me in to see what my take is, and what, just to get some more brains in the room. We had some roundtable sessions on it, stuff like that. I'll be interested to see how it comes out. They're definitely trying something very ambitious with it.
Very cool. One of the writers on the show, J.M. DeMatteis, is also part of the creative team working on Scooby Apocalypse. Have you checked out Scooby Apocalypse?
Yes, I have, and I love J.M. J.M. and I are pals, and I met him on the show. I mean, it was embarrassing. I mean, his comic work is legendary, and the man is a genius. And I was very, very sheepish, being a story editor and talking to J.M. DeMatteis about, here's how you write my show. Yeah, it was ridiculous. I'm a huge fan of the man's work. But it was, he actually knew very little about Scooby-Doo. He had never really watched Scooby-Doo very much. So he was coming at it very, very fresh, and he's also a huge music fan. He and I have a lot in common, and I love him. I love him personally, and I was honored to work with him, and I love the work he did. He did a great. We have an ancient Greece episode in season 2 that takes place in ancient Greece.
That's what I was going to ask, if he had anything else coming up.
Yeah. Jam's got a couple, and it's just super, super fun stuff. And I think he had fun cutting loose and just being able to be silly. A lot of his stuff is sort of serious. He's a very poetic writer. He's a very literary writer. He's a brilliant, brilliant guy. And but he's also he loves the Marx Brothers, and a chance for him to sort of play in that sandbox, I think, was as fun for him as it was for me to encourage him to sort of let his hair down and be silly.
Very cool. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I guess I'll wrap it up with the question I ask everybody, which is, what would you credit the longevity of this property with? Why has Scooby-Doo been around for almost 50 years, continuously airing on television since September 13th, 1969, with nary a break in between?
Well, probably because of the variations on the theme. I think that there is, the original show was a hit, and hits begat hits, and they messed with the formula so much, tried so many different ways of approaching the show that it's never really been the same show. And not every iteration of the show has been successful or popular, but the character of Scooby-Doo is a Bugs Bunny. He's a Batman. He's a beloved character, and a character like that is hard to come by. And when a company has a character like that, they're going to try to introduce it to a new generation every single time, and catch lightning in a bottle. And the other generations are going to, encourage their children to watch it because they have fond memories of it. And these sorts of properties are rare, and it doesn't happen every time. I mean, you think of the gazillions of animated shows that came and went and didn't become Scooby-Doo or didn't become, Bugs Bunny or whatever. It makes sense, that you have a successful franchise character that you're going to work it. You're going to keep trying to do stuff with it.
Okay, so that's pretty much all I have for questions.
Cool. Mike, absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, John. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Take care, and let's keep in touch.
Sounds good.
All right, talk to you later.
So there you have it. That brings a close to my two-part interview with Jon Colton Barry. Thank you so much for joining us for that. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a long wait. I'm glad to finally have it out there in the world. I know John's listened to it, and he's happy with it as well, so thumbs up all around. And keep your eyes peeled and your ears to the ground for next week, because, as I said before I rolled the interview, I'm going to be releasing that audio commentary that John did for the pilot episode of Be Cool Scooby-Doo, Mystery 101. Don't miss it. It's going to be great. And with that, I'm going to bring things to a close. Keep it short and sweet. If you want to comment on this episode or any other episode or anything really Scooby-Doo related or podcast related, or you just want to yell at me or whatever, you can find me on Twitter at Scooby-Doocast. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Scooby-Doocast. I'm also on Instagram, posting stuff there every now and then. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's a blog, scoobydoocast.wordpress.com. Check us out over there. You can also get the show on iHeartRadio and Stitcher. If you know anybody who listens to the show from those podcast providers, let them know we're out there. Maybe they don't know we're there. Maybe they don't know to look for us. You let them know, share the love. And if you get the show off of iTunes, I would love it. Anybody would love it if when you downloaded their episode, you rated the show. Even better if you review the show, leave a few comments. It's always great to have that along the podcast when people are kind of browsing around. So if you're feeling inclined, I wouldn't complain. And one last thing, with John's permission, he's posted some demos and early versions of songs that he wrote and recorded for Be Cool Scooby-Doo. Last week I used his demo version of This Is How We Solve a Mystery. This week I'm going to use a version where Kate Micucci is actually also doing vocals. It's a much rougher version. They're obviously just kind of working some stuff out. A little bit different in the chorus. It's the whole reason for playing it. If you haven't heard it, it's kind of fun to listen to. And be sure to check out John's SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/Jon Colton Barry. Not only is there Be Cool Scooby-Doo stuff, there's some Phineas and Ferb stuff, and there's some other just music. John, you know John's a musician, right? He writes music. He plays music. He's got tons of music on the SoundCloud page. Totally worth checking out. Your life will be a little darker if you don't. So thanks again so much for joining me. Looking forward to seeing you guys again in a week. Enjoy whatever Scooby-related activities you get into in that time. And we'll see you next time on a podcast named Scooby-Doo.
Jasper looking at the photo of the prima donna. He obviously knew about the legend. I could tell you more, but I don't really wanna. Come on, Velma. You can do it. Entertain us in an informative way. Really? Okay. Then Shaggy in the dressing room with Bones Malone. A major clue on his own. It was a high-tech wireless microphone that can alter someone's pitch, frequency, and tone. sorry. Can we start at the top of that second? As the manager of Bones Malone, Jasper had complete control. But Bones discovered on his own that Jasper had an evil goal. His greediness took its toll. But there was one thing he never stole. He wanted to control his soul, but he'll never take away his rock and roll. Yeah. 'Cause clues are like equations. 1 + 2 is 3. Put 'em all together, and you solve a mystery. Bye.